Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about Kamala Harris and her landslide scenario in the 2024 election, which now looks more possible than ever, especially after this shock poll from Ann Selzer's company in Iowa was released a couple days ago. Of course, an A-plus rated pollster, to say the least. They are literally the best of the best. They are the top pollster in the nation, the most accurate. They showed Harris ahead by 3, as you all know, 47 to 44, in the state of Iowa. Iowa voted for Donald Trump in the last election in 2020 by 8.2%. That would be an 11-point trend towards the Democratic Party in 2024 from 2020. So this obviously got so much attention because since 2012, Ann Selzer has never been off by more than 2 points in a presidential election. Just 2 points. So to see her saying that Harris will win by 3, that was an absolute shock, and she might not win by 3. This is my forecast. I think that he wins by 1. I still can't comprehend Donald Trump winning. But what it does is it lays the groundwork for a Kamala Harris landslide nationwide that nobody was really expecting until this Seltzer poll came out. This proves that it's possible. This A-plus pollster, Ann Selzer, again, never been off by more than 2 points in a presidential year since 2012. They say that Kamala Harris will make a rural white state like Iowa, where you wouldn't even think Harris would do all that well, become 11 points more Democratic from 2020. That is the sign of a landslide. If she can replicate anything close to that nationwide, she's winning over 400 electoral votes. So that is what we will be talking about today. And multitude of other factors. And what's also important before we get into every state, and we're going to start characterizing some as toss up here because this is Harris's landslide scenario. Obviously, she's going to do much better than this than my current forecast, even though I'm already very bullish on Harris. But what's also really interesting to note about this poll about Iowa is the fact that there has not been a active campaign in Iowa. Democrats haven't spent significant money on ads. Republicans haven't, bought significant or haven't, completed a significant ad buy. This is Iowa. Trump won it by 8 points in 2020. It really wasn't that close in the last election, and in a race that's supposed to be so dead even, right? It's supposed to be, much closer than 2020, which would mean Iowa becoming more Republican. This poll says the absolute opposite. But again, as I was saying before, there has been no active campaign in Iowa. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, none of them have visited the state of Iowa. So it means that, without these commercials and ads swaying people's votes, whatever, billboards, mailers, etc., stickers, whatever it may be, signs, just based off of the race alone, just the basic facts and how voters feel about the race, not whatever, affected by commercials and an active campaign and all that, Harris immediately already takes a lead. That is the common consensus. That is what Ann Selzer's poll reveals. When there's not an active campaign swaying people's votes, the standard, the automatic thoughts about this race is, yeah, Kamala Harris is the choice. So that means that, while even in Harris's landslide scenario, these traditionally battleground states where, Trump is running whatever an effective campaign with ads and all that might not surprise us all that much. Other states that weren't even on our radar might, because there isn't an active campaign, like Iowa, like Ohio, like Texas, like Florida, etc. So again, this was that was my forecast, what you were looking at there. And for the most part, a lot of these states would stay, would stay the same margin. But quite a few likely Democratic states would become safe. Looking at this 11-point trend in Iowa, Kamala Harris can, replicate something even more in blue states. I know that Iowa doesn't directly translate to every state, that's for sure. But especially in blue states where Kamala Harris has been, has proven to, energize Democrats nationwide, that will be most felt in blue states where there simply are more Democrats. I could see states like Minnesota, which only went to Biden by 7, Harris gaining 8 points in Minnesota to make it a safe state, especially since it's right next door to Iowa, very similar electorate. New Mexico shifts 5 points to become safe. New Hampshire, I could very well see becoming safe. This is in the realm of, very well within the realm of possibility that these states that, once were on our radar when Biden was the nominee are now safe. and she's already at a massive electoral advantage, as well as Nebraska's second congressional district. That one could very well become safe as well. We've seen massive shifts in suburbs, especially for Kamala Harris. Now, again, in Harris's best case scenario, I do already have some likely states. I would add a couple more, like Mississippi, whatever. This is just marginal stuff. It doesn't really matter. Nebraska, I would put as well for what it's worth. But now we really get into the more interesting states. States you might notice you've got your seven battleground states, these core battleground states, but also joining them a wide variety of Republican states. And as I said, these are really the ones that might surprise us on election night. Don't be too surprised if you see Iowa or Ohio become very close to flipping blue, while Wisconsin does go to Harris, but it is by a very narrow margin. Based off of how much to the left Iowa and Ohio would shifted in 2024. You might, it just might not make sense. Iowa and Ohio might shift way more to the left than Wisconsin does. That's the point I'm trying to get at. So, looking at the seven core battleground states, first of all, because I think that in this landslide scenario, I think that these seven, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, wouldn't become battlegrounds anymore. They wouldn't really be all that close. No, Iowa, Ohio, Texas, Florida, these red states would actually replace their role as battlegrounds, which nobody really expected. Now, first of all, you all know, Michigan and Pennsylvania, I actually already have in my current forecast as likely Democrat. Yes, I have them at over 5% margins. Biden won them by 2.8 and 1.2 respectively. And, with women turning out in record numbers, you've got suburbs, which are extremely influential in both of the outcomes in races in Michigan, around Detroit, and of course in Pennsylvania, around Philadelphia. And what Kamala Harris has been proven to do is solidify white college educated, especially women, white college educated women in the Democratic base. Roe is turning out voters, and nowhere more prominently than the suburbs. Not to mention, this more goes down to a prediction, but John Fetterman won by 5 points in Pennsylvania in 2020 in the Senate race. On the gubernatorial side in 2022, despite it supposed to be a red wave, Michigan went to Whitmer by 11 when you round. Pennsylvania went to Shapiro by 15 in Michigan and Pennsylvania, respectively. These are states where you have strong Democratic bases. Donald Trump is probably a weaker candidate than the Republican nominee was in Michigan, and just as, a weak of a candidate as Doug Mastriano was in Pennsylvania. Well, maybe a bit more, but you get the point I'm trying to make. If Kamala Harris continues this trend, Donald Trump cannot survive. He is a famously weak candidate, a notoriously weak candidate, I should say, in 2024. I don't see how he could possibly do as well in 2016. And of course, in Harris's landslide scenario, there will be a strong, hidden Harris vote. It may have come out in the Iowa poll, but it's missing in most other averages of polls. States like Michigan and Pennsylvania used to be Democratic strongholds. In a landslide scenario for Harris, these once Democratic strongholds would return back to her. Maybe you had some disaffected Democrats along the way, right? White, working class, blue collar workers who voted for Obama twice, might have switched over to Trump in 2016, maybe 2020 voted for Trump or Biden, who knows. But in Harris's landslide scenario, she will not only be able to return those voters, but really energize a new wave of Democratic women. And that will produce strong victories, near 8-point victories in Michigan and Pennsylvania alike. I would also add one more, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry, not Pennsylvania, Nevada. In the Senate race in 2020, Catherine Cortez Masto won by 0.8%. Just again, 2022, you had a worse economy than it is now. You had worse immigration policy than it is now, much more, looser, much more immigrants flowing into the country through the border. And still, Democrats did very well. Now with Donald Trump, and in many of these states, you actually had relatively strong Republican nominees, like Adam Laxalt in Nevada. He was very strong. Donald Trump, nothing compared to what, the strength that some of these other candidates had. So Nevada would be likely, And honestly, Georgia would be likely. I think that North Carolina and Arizona are out of reach, but you got the idea. Arizona and North Carolina, even in Harris's best case scenario, I think would be lean. I just don't think that there was enough slack given by Biden in the 2020 election for these to possibly be over 5% margin. I mean, Trump won North Carolina by 1.3. Arizona was Biden plus zero point 0.3. There just isn't enough slack there. But again, Harris is making gains nationwide for all the same reasons as I've outlined before. So that leaves us with, and Wisconsin is likely as well. I don't know why I forgot to characterize that one in the blue wall. So that leaves us with 4 Republican states plus Maine's second congressional district. Now, for reference, Iowa voted for Trump by 8.2, Ohio by 8, Texas by 5.6, Florida by 3.4, and Maine's second district by 7.4. Now, as I said, this directly relates to all these states because nobody is really campaigning strongly in any of these states. Republicans for sure are not campaigning at all in any of these states. Florida, there has been a little tiny interest by Democrats, and Texas, there has been a splash of interest by Democrats. Harris visited what was it, Dallas or Houston once, but it was mostly just to campaign for the Democratic candidate for Senate, who is actually in a more competitive race, Colin Allred, against Ted Cruz. So there really hasn't been all that much interest, especially by the Republicans in these 4 states, and it really opens the door, again, for this Iowa factor. When there's not an active campaign, when there's not commercials running, the automatic sort of initial consensus is pro Harris. It's more friendly to Harris. Voters are just naturally, um, you know, not friendly to Trump, and it makes sense. I mean, he did very well in Iowa in 2016 and 2020, and in both those years, all the other polls were expecting a tied race, a very close toss-up race. What does that mean? Trump campaigned in Iowa in both years. His campaign actively put resources and commercials into winning Iowa. That is not the same in 2024. So in 2024, Harris's landslide scenario, I would see. I mean, you can't argue with Ann Selzer. Even in Harris's best case scenario, she really can't match Ann Selzer's poll, or she can't exceed, I should say, Ann Selzer's poll all that much because this is still insane to think. But never doubt Ann Selzer. In Harris's best case scenario, she wins Iowa by a lean margin. And considering the fact that they are so similar geographically and politically and marginally, right? Ohio was Trump plus 8, Iowa was Trump plus 8.2 in 2020. Ohio would also vote for Harris by a very similar margin. Now that leaves us, and she's well over 270 by now. I would say that Maine's second. Honestly, I don't think that Harris can possibly win Maine's second. Large margin in 2020. They have shown their defiance against Democrats in recent years. Nationally, that is at least. But I'd put it as tilt Republican, very small margin. But anyway, that leaves us with 2 states remaining in a combined 70 electoral votes. It all comes down to these. So you've got Texas and you've got Florida. Again, 5.6 and 3.4% margins, respectively. In Ann Selzer's poll, Iowa is shifting 11 points towards the left. Now, there are factors, right? Iowa does have a near total abortion ban. That hurts. That's going to hurt Republicans. But Florida's got a pretty restrictive ban. Texas does as well. So this poll, yes, it's crazy to think, but this is not. This is going to have a very similar effect when it comes to the abortion ban and everything. You might see very similar results in places you don't expect, like Texas, like Florida. Not only that, Texas and Florida were both significantly closer in 2020 than was Iowa. Again, Iowa was Trump plus 8. Texas was Trump plus 5.5. Florida was Trump plus 3.5. If you've got Iowa blue, Ohio blue, a lot of these states, just record margins for Kamala Harris. You bet Texas and Florida are going blue. And I would honestly put Texas as likely. I think that's possible. Yes, to the left of Arizona and North Carolina, which does sound crazy. But the abortion ban in Iowa really shows how that could make all the difference, could really strengthen Democrats. If there is an abortion ban in a state, you don't have that same effect in North Carolina. I guess you do in Arizona. Maybe Arizona you put likely Democrat in your best case scenario, but Texas, Florida. But Florida I would put lean. Florida is a rapidly trending Republican state, so Harris would have to offset that as well, but it really doesn't matter. She wins all 30 electoral votes. So it is an absolute blowout. She wins 412 electoral votes, and Alaska actually does get reduced, as well as South Carolina, to lean margins. I forgot that. Over 3/4 of electoral votes, a complete blowout for Kamala Harris. Could you imagine this? And it proves that this is possible. And believe it or not, this is the best case scenario in my mind. It would be even better for Kamala Harris if this exact poll does replicate nationwide. Again, an 11-point trend towards the left would mean that you have all the states blue, that you see blue here, in fact turn blue. On top of that, you would have Maine's second flip. You would have Alaska flip. You would have South Carolina basically be 50-50. I think that Republicans win by like 0.5% or something. You would have Kansas go down to a lean margin. You would have Missouri, Mississippi go down to lean margins. It would be a total blowout if this isn't itself. So here it is, 412 to 126. Could you imagine if this could happen? Well, it is possible, in fact. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe down below. Drop a comment to let me hear your thoughts on this video, and I will see you all later.